Alright, with Unity you've already seen that you can use components to add game behavior to your game objects. Well, another common approach is to use a hierarchy-based system. In a hierarchy-based system, you would have a parent class that would define something like a game object's position in 3D or 2D space. From there, you might do something like have a child class that defines how it will be drawn on screen, whether it's 3D, 2D, uses triangles, quads, whatever. From there, you would add a collision child, and from there, maybe even physics. And then you would have your actual concrete class like a rock, glass, anything really that might exist in your game.
In the Elysian Shadows engine, we'd always utilize an inheritance-based hierarchy tree to define our entities. We went to great depths to ensure the best possible arrangement for this hierarchy, but there was always something in the back of my mind that wondered if there was a better way to do this, a prettier way to do this, or a more efficient way to go about this. And it really wasn't until I was introduced to the Unity engine that I was able to pinpoint just exactly what this better alternative was.
There are some disadvantages with the hierarchy system, and that's what I want to point out. For instance, you may have something that is transparent. It doesn't really necessarily need to be drawn on screen, but it does need to have collision. Well, in a hierarchy-based system, if you are inheriting behaviors from, a transform, rendering, collision, and then physics, you still have rendering to worry about. You're still inheriting those behaviors, but you may not necessarily need them. You'd have to have like a Boolean flag or something to tell you that, hey, I don't need to draw this object, but it still needs to have collision. Well, with a component-based system, you add what you want. You don't necessarily have to have something to render it if you don't need to render it. So I drew a graph to help reiterate the situation I was just talking about with components in a hierarchy-based system. So for instance, let's say that you have a warp in your game. Well, a warp, it has a position, it needs collision, but it doesn't necessarily need to render anything, it's invisible. Well, in a hierarchy-based system, you start with a base object, you inherit render object behaviors functions, collision objects behaviors and functions, until you get down to warp. Well, in this instance, you don't really need anything from render object. It's invisible, it doesn't need to be drawn. So using the hierarchy system, you may run into situations where you're not exactly utilizing everything that you inherited.
So, I'm back on toolkit duty, and I have 2 long years of experience and an extensive history of excellence under my belt.
I push button 2 and that switches me to layer 2, where objects, what is this? What the hell is this? As you can see, here's the map. As you can see, this is not the map.
We just found a really bad memory leak in Marcel's level editor. Peter, show me your RAM usage.
Okay, let me.
And for some reason it leaks RAM when it's got a memory leak when you enable rendering warps.
And I would say that, in my time developing with Elysian Shadows, the ES Toolkit is by far the most stable and secure piece of software the ES team has had the liberty of working with.
Alright, so we're about to have our very first look at the brand new Elysian Shadows toolkit, and I'm about as scared as all of the rest of you.
Man, tell me that's not one attractive toolkit.
Wow.
Look at that.
Would you look at that?
Isn't, oh my god.
How long did it take you to crash that?
That's a good question.
About 5 seconds.
First time, 5 seconds.
Count. It was a quick fix, dumb UI bug.
Alright.
It's stable now. Now, one of the first things you're going to notice is the totally enhanced UI. First of all, it's just a giant level. The entire screen's a big level. My good friend, hit the space bar. Look at this. The tiles and objects completely pop out. They're not obscuring your view. You can just tell them, go away, come back. It's pretty
that
sweet.
is pretty cool.
For those of you who haven't watched the early adventures in game development, there's a big distinction between tiles and objects in our game. Tiles go on the bottom layer, and they don't have transparency. Well, I mean, they do, but they're not made for that. Look, they take up an entire tile, like for large expanses of grass or whatever, whereas objects are the guys who lay on top of them. Show us the objects, please. Look, they've got the transparency. They actually have more specific collision, and they're just treated differently in the engine. As you can see, the 2 sheets are separated on the bottom, whereas in the old toolkit they were on the side.
Right.
Now, one cool thing about the editor,
Definitely
the
looks
slick
better.
new UI, is the fact that you can enable or disable these things right here. How Tyler's been doing. Okay, he just disabled the tiles and the objects. Flip over to the other map. Oh yeah, speaking of which, once again, tab browsing. Project
Okay,
has
that
multiple
is
levels.
by far the most impressive addition, in my opinion, is that now you can have multiple areas open simultaneously.
The old editor had that. Anyway,
Didn't do it very well.
yeah, it did. No, it didn't. Now, notice in this one actually has different Z layer. And go to layers. Probably not the best example, but check this out. Disable the top. There's objects and tiles right here. See the collision or the transparency. Now, some actual features of the editor. Go click on a green grass tile. Now, drag it and just drag it down. Do a fill selection. Okay, left click and then right click and drag across. See, it's like fill selection, just like on the old editor. I haven't completely finished implementing all of it so that you can do all the fancy, like, tiling multiple at the same time, but it's in there, and I'm working on it.
So in my opinion, the best thing about the new toolkit is that we're finally able to work together. Marcel's previous level editor was written in Blitz Plus. None of the other programmers on the team knew Blitz Plus. None of us were able to read his code. None of us were able to help him in any manner. And there was essentially this giant lack of communication between Marcel and his level editor and everybody else on the team. Now that it's written in C++ with Qt, we're able to sit down together, make important design decisions, and actually even share code. And I feel like this is going to be a vital part to the toolkit's success.
So, a cool feature that I've decided to implement in the toolkit is uniform zoom and scale. These are two features that will prove to be invaluable to level designers, as it will allow them to simply zoom way the heck out and scroll across to their area of interest just to zoom back in. This effectively eliminates the need of a mini-map or some kind of display like that. And as for rotation, this allows the level designers to lay these non-organic looking expanses. So let me zoom out, rotate it a little bit, and let me place a lot of them. So you'll realize that this is like this big jagged shape with these circular edges because of the way that it handles them. And this is all possible due to Qt's backend being OpenGL and everything being rendered as a polygon. So I'm literally rendering hundreds of thousands of tiles simultaneously with just a lower level of detail. Pretty cool. Another reason why my choice with Qt was a smart one.
Just think about something Marcel's new level editor. Right?
Oh, really? Yeah.
What is very, very important to a level designer besides actually building levels?
Okay, well, personally, it's very important to me that his toolkit doesn't crash every 10 minutes.
Oh, got that covered.
But, we don't live in a perfect world, right, guys? So,
Well,
carry on.
Building level and making sure the level matches, the environment that you're trying to make and everything like that. In order to make sure that it looks good and feels right, you have to export it, put it in the engine, run the engine. It doesn't work, and do all those steps again and again and again. How awesome would it be to be able to actually execute the level from the level editor?
Yeah, that's badass, yeah.
That'd be a whole lot like what Unity does. If you've never done games before, lots of times, you start out and they're telling you to edit source code, and you really don't know if the game works until you compile it, run it, and pray for the best. But if you could actually run the game from inside the toolkit, you're ready to go. That'd be awesome.
All right, so what would that require on your behalf as far as the toolkit is concerned?
Well, for me, it would actually be pretty simple because I'm using Qt. Qt's got this nice little thing set up called a Q process. I could probably just run the engine in a separate thread and be done with it.
Well, that sounds cute.
Sounds pretty easy, but don't you have some work to do?
Yeah, well, I'll go think on that, guys. I'll get back to you. So the toolkit needs some kind of functionality that allows it to invoke the engine and pretty much say, look, bitch, this is the level I'm currently editing. I want to be able to play through it. And I've decided the best way to implement this would probably be as a series of command line arguments. That way, level designers or artists can just pull up the command prompt and call the engine themselves, supplying the correct level or area they want to run, independent of Marcel's toolkit. Alright, so we've recompiled the editor and the engine. It's time to see our work
combined.
All right, come over here and check this out. Okay, so here's a level running, right? This is the one you guys have seen probably a trillion
Okay,
times
this is
by
a
now.
level in the level editor. All right.
Now, if I got a file, invoke engine, notice the keyboard shortcuts Control
Whoa,
R.
whoa, whoa. Invoke engine, okay.
Kabam! Running the engine, the exact same
Oh,
level. Not only
shit.
this, escape to close it, but let me lay some crap, save my project.
All right, now he's got crap
Now,
there.
see the crap that I laid?
So we can make sure he's not
Invoke
cheating.
engine. Kabam! Right there, laid all up in the
man.
level.
Oh,
Check
alright,
that
exit.
stuff out.
What do you think, bro?
I'm impressed.
I am genuinely impressed as well.
One of the beauties of choosing to use Qt is the fact that it is completely cross-platform. Not only do Falco and I find ourselves switching from our MacBooks to our Windows machines several times a day, but the Dreamcast and PSP toolchains are actually completely cross-platform. This allows me as a developer to devote the majority of my time towards actually implementing new features for the end user and for the artist, rather than wasting my time working out compatibility issues.